All right, Wes. So 110-84, Team USA beats Serbia. One of the only teams that I think you would say has a chance to beat them, and it very much did not go that direction. Nikola Jokic was good but not great, and the team fell apart when he was not on the court, especially when the U.S. second unit, which you picked as it was your pick as like the surprising team, the exciting team, most fun
like
team.
That, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, the bench could win a gold by itself, so that's not a surprise. But a couple of rotation questions, I think, especially looking toward the NBA side of things, popped up out of this win, Wes. One was Joel Embiid, the biggest one in my opinion. Joel Embiid, 12 minutes, 4 points, 2 rebounds, -8 in the box score. Now, to be fair, some of that, I think, is the fact that a lot of his minutes came when Jokic was on, and his minutes on the bench came when Jokic was also on the bench, so a little bit of a defensive Embiid before we pick at him. But this continues a trend where he just has not looked comfortable or effective at all in that starting center spot, despite all the attention about him joining this team, Wes. So how worried would you be if you're a Sixers fan about this, I think is my question.
I'm not worried if I'm a Sixers fan, even a little bit. First of all, he's coming off of an injury. We weren't even sure he's going to play in this. He's clearly still hampered by that injury. If I'm worried about anything, it's that he's just never going to fully recover by the time the regular season starts. Yeah. But there still should be enough time off, and I don't think if this were that big of an issue, he would be playing on it in the first place. This is something he's going to have to work through either in Paris or in the United States or somewhere. So I'm not that concerned about it, and I'm not all that surprised by the fact that he has struggled even despite the health concerns. This is just not his game. FIBA style is not meant for Joel Embiid, and I think that there's going to be an opportunity for Joel Embiid to potentially work himself into a position where he looks a little bit better at the end of this Olympic run versus right now in this Olympic run. And if there's anything there that I'm feeling good about as a Sixers fan, it's that, well, maybe if I can get Joel Embiid's sort of dials turned 5% more in a FIBA direction, that is a little bit more ball movement, a little bit more quick decision with the ball in my hands, that could help us incorporate Paul George. It could help Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey take that next level as a two-man game and all these things. Maybe there's a learning experience that we can get through this. But in the meantime, if Joel Embiid still is just an MVP candidate every single year, that's not the worst-case scenario. And I just don't know what world we expected Joel Embiid to be on this team in this environment and thrive, because that's just not his game.
We talked about it a little bit heading in, that the general idea or why they recruited Embiid so much was because typically they've struggled with teams with traditional centers. But then you zoom out, and this year in the tournament, because it's a little smaller than the World Cup and whatnot, and just the luck of the draw, sort of, no Lithuania with Valanciunas, no Sabonis, for instance, either. I mean, Turkey with Şengün, like however far down you want to try to go with this, those teams weren't there. However, this should have been a game where it did prove important. Jokic is the epitome of the type of guy that if you were just rolling into this tournament with, for instance, in that Jeremy Grant, Damian Lillard team I mentioned, JaVale McGee and Bam as your centers, like you would have been a little bit scared. Mm-hmm. And so the fact that he didn't even really seem to make his presence felt and really disrupt and impact the game much in one of those matchups that they needed him, quote unquote, needed him for, that does worry me. I guess the direction of where it worries you or how is kind of the question. And I guess I'll say the more environments and the more teammates we see Embiid with over his NBA career and now in this situation, I do think that it could be a problem if and when we do ever see him make a deep playoff run, that he doesn't seem to be able to really adapt and kind of evolve to what the game and the opponent call for. And look, he won an MVP being so good at his own game that it didn't really matter what anyone else was doing, and honestly could have won another one this year if he had stayed healthy. So that's suiting him just fine. But the league is, just look at Boston and what they demand of you to beat them versus what New York does in the Knicks. I do think that is part of the kind of story of Embiid right now. This should have been and could have been a time for him to like demonstrate that he can do that, and he didn't.
Yeah.
And it doesn't look like he's going to.
Well, he also, to your point, he didn't get the Valanciunas draw, right? He did get the worst possible version of the player that he was supposed to battle against in Nikola Jokic. And I'll be interested to see what he looks like maybe again versus Germany or a team that just has some other big bodies when he gets maybe his legs under him and gets a little bit more healthy. Like I said, I am not making excuses for him. He had a bad game, and he was bad right away, smoking layups. He got pulled.
And like
within the
worse
first
than he
few
was in the
minutes.
playoffs, right? Like
Yes.
he was also hurt then.
And exactly to your point here, that is sort of the story of Joel Embiid. He is the most dominant scorer in the league when he's healthy. I don't think it's close. The problem is when he's not healthy, that margin for error goes kaput. And all of a sudden, there's no other kind of direction he can lean into, because if he's not fully healthy and not fully dominant as a scorer, it's not like he is this next level passer. It's not like he's this super versatile defender. There's not a lot of other things that he's doing at an extremely high level that he can sort of tilt his game in that direction. And that's why Embiid and the Sixers haven't gotten out of the second round of the playoffs, is the guy just gets sort of beaten down as the season goes on. And there's definitely been some unfortunate bad luck injuries. Like him breaking his face has nothing to do with his conditioning, or the orbital fracture thing that he had. So there's definitely some bad luck here, but I don't know. I'm still wondering, can he grow from this experience? We're still so early on in this. And if I'm a Joel Embiid fan, that's what I'm hoping for. It's that there is some sort of awareness that kicks in. There is some sort of other gear that kicks in, the way that, Dwayne Wade developed this off-ball game when he started playing with LeBron James. It took a year. It took a while. But I think playing with these guys could end up being beneficial for Embiid. But still, the thing is here, if that doesn't happen, isn't this like a lose-lose for Joel Embiid playing for Team USA right now? Because even if they win the gold medal and he stinks, does the story just become Team USA won the gold medal despite Joel Embiid? And if he does say, and some people are calling on him to be so aware that he says, you know what, I don't care if you had some sort of promise to me that I'm going to start. I'm self-aware enough to know that I should go to the bench. That's not a win. That's not a winning situation for him, because now he's the guy that comes off the bench for Team USA. It's kind of like a quitting mentality. The only way that this works out for Joel, and if they lose, well, then it's Joel Embiid's fault, which is the worst possible situation. So the only way this works out for Joel Embiid is if he just becomes this player who he has not been throughout his entire basketball life so far, and Team USA wins gold for a team that doesn't even need him in the first place, probably, to win the gold medal, which is unfair to him, because I don't know that there's any one single player that they do need, but there is, because they're so great in their totality. But This is a really tough sort of Olympics for Joel Embiid to walk away from as a winner.
How the game went in the opener is the best case scenario for him narrative-wise, right? Where they just win. It is a story that he's not up to his normal standard, but not the story, because they still win, and he's not like so brutally bad that he like botches a game or anything, or even comes close to doing that, and it kind of just flies under the radar. That would be sort of the best case scenario, I think, for him, outside of what you're saying could very well happen, which is just that this feels like a distant memory by the time we get to the gold medal game and he scores 25 points and has 5 blocks or something. But yeah, it's funny to me, because with him, there's a case you could make if you wanted to be a hater that he hasn't, outside of passing, gotten like a ton better in specific ways since he really like broke out in the NBA. And there is a lot to be said about the passing, but it's also like this curse of this situation for him too, in order to activate those more team-based aspects of his game, because it's so similar to the problem that he's had in Philly, which is that he has a whole cast of new people to learn every single time he takes the court. I do think that he is a chemistry-based guy, as you could see with how much he seems to like playing with and get better playing with Tyrese Maxey, as just one example. So I do think that it could get better because he gets even a touch more chemistry over the next couple of weeks with these guys. But I think you could also look at it from another standpoint and say that's part of why maybe he doesn't have that quick twitch IQ stuff going, because these are all new dudes and he's trying to just fill a role and he might be in his head too much.
And on the flip side of that, too, Anthony Davis has so much chemistry built up with LeBron James. Bam Adebayo has so much chemistry just built up by being part of Team USA as sort of one of the foundational guys of this group, over the last, half decade now. So Embiid is walking in, first-time citizen of Team, you know what I mean? Like, just first time, like, being a part of this whole thing, and he's just expected to do it on the fly. And even a guy like, he's played with, like, James Harden in the past. He's not part of this team. Ben Simmons, obviously. But, like, I'm just trying to – and he would be Australian anyway. But I'm just saying, like, guys that he's played with are not part of this group because he's kind of gone through those. He would almost be better off playing for a smaller team, right? Like a different country, whether it was
I think if Cameroon was a little bit better, that would be perfect for him,
Right? But
if they were actually a real player on this stage, then that would be
right.
Like I've seen it with DeAndre Ayton in the Bahamas. He looks better in that environment with the pride of it and the trust from the staff and the talent. He's the top dog. That is really helpful for certain guys. I think it would have been for Embiid.
It's almost an easier assignment to understand and execute when you are just the one guy. And it's just like, look, just do the Joel Embiid things, man. Just take over every game, be the best player on the court, and there's something to that. I don't know. I'm wondering, like, what would you do if you were Joel Embiid, right? I'm trying to think of the way that you can almost simplify this for him. And the thing I keep coming back to is just try to play the best defense you've ever played, and you don't have to play it the way Anthony Davis do, and you don't have to play it the way Bam do. And then, by the way, the Team USA coaching staff is not asking you. They play you and drop, do the thing that you're good at. Just be the biggest human on the court. Just really try to play the best defense you've ever played, but also try to pick one player that you develop chemistry with. Instead of trying to do it with everybody and trying to find your spots as Joel Embiid, just say, you know what? Here's the easiest version of this. Just pass the ball to Steph Curry every possession.
It feels like it should be Steph, right? I mean,
right?
Like
just pass to him every time.
The Maxey angle of it is obviously one, but we've seen Embiid have good chemistry with Redick, with Curry, Seth Curry, with Marco Bellinelli a long time ago, right? Like he has always had some fun two-man game chemistry with shooters. So there's been some fun moments between those two.
Yeah, and it's a cheat code, right? Because Steph is the greatest shooter of all time. Like, you don't even have to have any real chemistry. You just pass him the ball, and he'll probably make the shot. And then, boom, wow, you just sort of chalk that one up as chemistry, even though it has nothing to do with it. But that's how you sort of rebrand yourself if you're Joel Embiid, I think, is just pick a couple of things and just do those really well. Don't focus so much on getting your spots and getting your shots.
So Bam as his backup brings us to, I think, the other element of this, which I was saying before we hit record, is already too big of a story given that it's one game, and Steve Kerr's primary quote about this was that he felt like an idiot for even doing it, but Jayson Tatum got a DNP. And I look at Bam as the guy probably in this game and in some of the exhibitions, quote-unquote, taking Tatum's minutes, if you want to put that blame and be so blunt about it. And Kerr's doing this thing in the second unit, or some of the time when the bench is on the court. He's not really running full five-man any direction, but where AD and Bam are on the court together. And that, I'm not sure that that's something that you can do against every single team, I think if a team, like I think of Germany, if they really want to stretch you out and bomb from three, you might run into some issues if they have one big on the court and they're spacing around that and Schroeder's darting around and everything. There's other ones that could probably do it. So I guess my question to you as a Bam Adebayo expert is, why do you think he's out there? Why do you think Kerr likes that double big lineup, a small ball coach suddenly playing two bigs and Bam's getting minutes? He's not a shooter. He's trying to kind of be a shooter, I guess, right now. Is it just the trust and the equity of being a Team USA guy, or why do you think they like him even in an unorthodox role?
Well, I think size was such an issue for the FIBA World Cup run that there might be a little bit of an overcorrection, right? Where you say, well, let's just keep so much size out there that we're never going to be accused of size being a problem with this team because we have Joel Embiid in the starting lineup and then we have two bigs in the second unit. So that might be part of it. I also think this specific matchup against Serbia called for Bam and Anthony Davis. I know a lot was made out of Jayson Tatum not playing. Jayson Tatum doesn't help Team USA win that game against Serbia. He doesn't not hurt them, or he doesn't hurt them, but he doesn't help them either. And with Kevin Durant coming back, I think the easiest thing for Kerr to do is just be like, all right, I basically just give Kevin Durant Jayson Tatum's old minutes because they kind of functionally play the same role for this team, right? Large, switchy wings who could just shoot it from everywhere on the court. Their job is primarily as floor spacing scorers. And I don't know that you really need Tatum on this team when you have Kevin Durant. And by the way, vice versa. I don't know that you need Kevin Durant if you got Tatum. It kind of feels like a one or the other thing. Although in this game, I think you did need that size because you're going up against Nikola Jokic, and he's the guy. If you were going to lose, it's because Jokic had an MVP type of game against him. Well, what do we have on our roster? We have Anthony Davis, who has guarded Nikola Jokic in more high-leverage moments than maybe any other center in the league over the last 2 seasons. And we also have Bam Adebayo, who's probably second on that list because they played each other in the 2023 finals. So I have the two sort of quote-unquote best guys to defend Jokic. Let's just make sure Jokic doesn't beat us. And this is the best way we could do that. But I think in this game on Wednesday against South Sudan, I think you do need Jayson Tatum in that game. And I think you could see maybe Bam loses minutes to him or somebody else. But South Sudan wants to play more of sort of that 5-out perimeter-based game. They want to get up threes. They want to try to win the math battle. And that seems to me to be a game where Tatum, with his ability to switch onto the perimeter and kind of play that perimeter stuff, obviously all of his experience playing small ball with Boston, that to me feels like the right matchup. And since Steve Kerr already said that he's going to play, he's going to play. But yeah, I could see Bam, Tatum, some other guy. This might just be a story every night or every game where it says, okay, who got the DNP-CD? Because you can't play all these guys.
I think it will, and that's part of why I feel like it was so overblown after this one game, especially considering they won by 26. It's like, are we really that desperate? Yeah. Talk about NFL preseason or something, guys. It's not that serious. But the one thing Tatum does, or is, that no one else on this roster can really claim is he's the only big athletic wing they actually really have, right? LeBron and KD are here. They're not that anymore. They have a lot of smaller wing defenders like Holiday, White, Ant, Book, but those guys are all top out at 6'5". So there are going to be times where they do need that. You know, Franz Wagner could be somebody if he gets hot and is really locked in and going. But obviously, beyond that, what's their answer for Giannis if that world ever comes to be, you know? Right. There's players I could see them facing where that type of defensive player would be necessary. But I agree with you on the offensive end. Their roles are pretty much the same between Tatum and Durant, and even, you know, maybe you could say Ant and Booker even. All four of those guys kind of occupy the same type of role. However, on the negative end, and part of why I can see Tatum not being a surefire, he's getting minutes every night guy on this team is, I think in some of those exhibitions where we were seeing them struggle a little bit with flow on the offensive end and shot selection, not to beat a dead horse, but that's not his strong suit. He was taking pull-up threes off of a pick and roll. He was, you know, chucking a little bit and not keeping the ball moving the way that obviously we know Kerr wants to, but also just to make this team its best, we know they have to do. So I think Durant, Bam even, there's guys on this team that are going to do that better than Tatum. When he's out there on offense, he's going to be a little bit more of a black hole than other guys are. And if you're trying to avoid that, given the Embiid conversation we just had, and Ant can be that way and whatever else, it's all about balancing and finding the right five-man groups, and Tatum doesn't fit into all those.
Bam played 20 minutes. He takes 6 shots in that game versus Serbia. This is not a guy who needs the ball in his hands. It's almost the opposite of the Embiid problem. Is the feature for Bam Adebayo being involved in these games is he's happy defending his butt off, rebounding the basketball, and setting awesome screens for his star teammates. He kind of does keep the gears going, and he's a great passer at his position too. He's a no-nonsense, zero-maintenance superstar player that you could put out there where, and to your point, we're not trying to go off on Jayson Tatum here, but he's not like the number one ball handler the way that, LeBron is, Steph Curry, even Anthony Edwards are. He's gotten better there, but I don't know. I agree with everything that you just said. And his best attributes defensively, yes, he's able to switch everything. But when your bedrock defensively already is, we've got Anthony Davis and Bam Adebayo and Drew Holiday and Derek White out there, it's like, okay, how worried are you about defense? And then offensively, yeah, there's a million things Tatum does awesome on offense, but you also don't necessarily need him. Like, I don't know. I don't think Team USA necessarily needs Jayson Tatum. And it's
what's funny though, right?
Kind
Is
of
like
a weird way to put that.
You talk about it with Bam, the equity side of things. Tatum has been in this group the same amount of time, right? So I'm sure there is a little bit of, loyalty factor there as well, and that's probably part of why they want to reward him. He's also 26, so he theoretically could be part of this 2 more times or 3 if he, wants to. So can't relegate him out of the group, and like we said, Kerr already committed to playing him. But yeah, it'll be fascinating how they go and where they go.
We're making so much out of this, and we've already said this, like everybody's making too much out of this, and we already know that Tatum's going to play the next game. I wonder just like if we knew Kevin Durant was going to play a week ahead of time, 3 days ahead of time before he was actually going to play, I wonder how much different the rotation looks. I do wonder how much of this was, oh my God, Kevin Durant's playing. Okay, how can we fit him in? We got to see what he's got. We got to see what he's all about right now. Just give him Tatum his minutes because they play the same position.
Did people do this in 1992? Was there picking apart of, wait, Barkley got 18 minutes in the last game. He only had 15 in this one. Does that mean X, Y, or Z? Do you think this was happening?
Well, since nobody remembers, maybe it doesn't even matter what the answer to that question is. But I guarantee you nobody was getting on Twitter and complaining about it. We know that for sure.
Yeah, well, that would have been crazy if they were. They would have had
probably
a
only
secret.
been the only person on Twitter doing that. Yeah.
No one else had access to. Yeah, that would have been wild. Yeah, well, we'll see. I will just say it's the most vanilla possible comment to have here, but it's pretty fucking awesome watching these guys play. Like, it is just, I said it on my son's podcast. It has made me complete, and you've had this experience, so I don't need to tell you, but it has made me completely come to the other side of the whole, sit and having a drink debate of like, would it even be fun to root for a dynasty at a certain point? Like, is it really like the Chiefs right now? Like, is the 3rd, 4th, 5th championship like anything special? The Patriots, the Spurs, whatever you want to point to. The answer to that question is yes, because I watched this team and I could watch them play for 15 years together, and it would never ever get old.
It's it's a good take, and the other part of it too is this team is so good that I know, and I'm guilty of this too, because I feel like I'm almost too cynical when we start talking about stuff. But this team is awesome to watch. And if our biggest complaint, or if our biggest talking point is going to be the whole Joel Embiid rag on him type of segment every other game, and who gets the DNP-CD tonight conversation, it feels like the most boring way to talk about this awesome basketball team imaginable, right?
Yeah.
So what's really cool is seeing these players come together, figure out how to play off of each other, and legitimately enjoy playing with each other. I think my favorite moments have been sort of the sideline, the guys who are not in the game, just sort of celebrating when LeBron James dunks it or Steph hits a 3 or whatever happens. It's been a joy to watch it so far, and we've only gotten through one real game.
It's so dominant that you have to find questions and negatives, because the only other option is to be those guys on the sideline and basically just like point with your mouth open and like
right.
become a meme. Like there's
right.
no like,
so how do we say
analysis of how cool it is.
Exactly.
Yeah. Whoa, that's not very like, that takes you 2 seconds and then you don't have a segment. So yeah, they'll be tested though. I think there will be a game that's much closer than this one at some point, and then there will be
the next
conversation. Sure, yeah, it could
South
be any. Literally, like Brazil was pushing pretty close with France. Greece was, they're going to be a threat because of Giannis. There's no bad team in this whole thing, so it could literally be any night.